A dramatic scene unfolding in court today as lawmakers for President Trump try to keep his taxes out of the public eye. Today, the attorneys urged a federal appeals court in New York to block prosecutors from getting access to Trump's taxes and company business records. This is a case that could soon end up before the United States Supreme Court. And interestingly, this 2016 quote from President Trump's campaign came back up in court today.
The people, my people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
So I need to tell you about something that just happened that has Trump's entire legal operation in absolute free fall right now. And I'm not using that word lightly. Free fall. Because a third lawyer just quit Trump's legal team. A third lawyer in a single week. And all of them, all three of them, cited the same reason for leaving: ethical concerns. Not scheduling conflicts, not family emergencies, not disagreements about strategy. Ethical concerns. 3 lawyers in 7 days looked at what they were being asked to do, looked at the direction the cases were heading, looked at what representing Donald Trump was requiring of them professionally, and they all reached the same conclusion: we can't do this anymore. This crosses lines we're not willing to cross. We're out. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Tax records, 8 years of records that were subpoenaed in August by the Manhattan DA, Cyrus Vance. Now, Trump's side argues that they shouldn't have to comply with the subpoena because President Trump, as president, has absolute immunity.
Come on. Are you seeing what's happening here? This is the president of the United States we're talking about, the most powerful person in the country, someone who should have access to the best legal talent money can buy, and he can't keep lawyers on his team for more than a few days before they start running for the exits. 3 resignations in 1 week, all citing ethics, all apparently triggered by the same fundamental problem that representing Trump requires doing things that conflict with their professional obligations and their personal integrity. When one lawyer quits citing ethical concerns, you might wonder if that lawyer is just being dramatic. When 3 lawyers quit in a week citing the same thing, there's clearly a pattern. There's clearly something seriously wrong with what's happening inside that legal operation. The timing of these departures couldn't be worse for Trump. He's got critical hearings coming up. He's got trials approaching. He's got multiple legal battles that require experienced counsel who know the cases inside and out. And instead of preparing for those proceedings, his team is scrambling to replace lawyers who just walked out the door. You can't just swap attorneys like you're changing your socks. These cases are complicated. The evidence is voluminous. The legal issues are intricate. New lawyers would need weeks or months to get up to speed, and Trump doesn't have weeks or months. He has days. He has hearings on the calendar. He has deadlines that can't be moved just because his legal team keeps falling apart. The 3rd resignation came right after some explosive courtroom incidents that have everyone talking. A judge reportedly criticized Trump's defense team for conduct that bordered on ethical violations. That's not normal. Judges criticize lawyers all the time for weak arguments or poor preparation, but criticizing conduct that borders on ethical violations is something else entirely. That's a judge signaling that the lawyers cross lines, that they did things that might violate their professional responsibilities, that they pushed too far in directions that the legal profession doesn't permit. And right after that criticism, another lawyer quits. The connection seems pretty obvious. The judge called out problematic conduct. The lawyer looked at what they'd been asked to do, and they decided they couldn't continue. What makes these resignations so significant is the reason being given. Lawyers quit cases all the time. It happens constantly in every courthouse in America. Clients don't pay their bills. Scheduling conflicts arise. Relationships break down. Strategies diverge. All of these are normal reasons for attorneys to exit a representation. But ethical concerns? That's different. That's serious. When a lawyer says they're quitting because of ethics, they're saying their professional obligations as an attorney are in conflict with what the client wants them to do. They're saying they can't continue without violating the rules that govern their profession. They're saying that staying on the case would put their law license at risk. You don't make that kind of statement lightly. You especially don't make it when your client is the president of the United States with all the media attention that brings. And we're not talking about one lawyer. We're talking about 3. 3 lawyers in a week, all reaching the same conclusion independently, all deciding that whatever Trump is asking them to do crosses lines they're not willing to cross. That's a pattern. That's a signal. That's evidence that something deeply problematic is happening inside Trump's legal operation. Something that's driving away experienced counsel. Something that's making lawyers choose their ethics over the prestige and money of representing a sitting president. The legal implications of this chaos are severe. You cannot run an effective defense when your legal team keeps collapsing. You cannot prepare properly for hearings when your attorneys are walking out days before you're supposed to appear in court. You cannot develop coherent strategy when the people implementing that strategy keep quitting because they think it crosses ethical lines. Every departure sets the defense back. Every resignation means someone new has to learn the case from scratch. Every exit creates gaps in preparation and continuity that opposing counsel can exploit. Trump's legal position was already precarious given everything else that's been happening. This lawyer exodus makes it dramatically worse. The political fallout from this story is also significant. Trump has built his brand on strength and winning. He's positioned himself as a fighter who never backs down. He's claimed to attract the best people to his cause. But what does it say when lawyers keep quitting because they can't ethically represent him? What does it say when 3 attorneys in 1 week decide that keeping their law licenses matters more than staying on Team Trump? It says the best people don't want to work for him. It says that representing him requires doing things that professionals refuse to do. It says that behind the bluster and the bravado is a legal operation in crisis, hemorrhaging talent at the worst possible moment. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what's happening with Trump's legal team, why lawyers are fleeing, what ethical concerns they're citing, and what this means for the cases Trump is facing and his ability to mount any kind of effective defense. Because this isn't just inside baseball about legal staffing. This is about whether the president can even field a team capable of defending him. And right now, the answer to that question is very much in doubt. Okay, so let's dig into what's actually happening here, because the surface level story, lawyers are quitting, doesn't capture the full severity of what Trump's legal operation is facing. We need to understand what ethical concerns actually means in the context of legal representation. We need to understand why lawyers will walk away from such a high-profile case, and we need to understand what this pattern of departures tells us about what Trump is asking his attorneys to do. Because 3 lawyers don't quit in a week citing ethics unless something seriously problematic is happening behind closed doors. Something that's making experienced legal professionals decide their careers and their consciences are more important than representing the President of the United States. Let me explain how legal ethics work, because this is crucial to understanding why these resignations are so significant. Every lawyer licensed to practice law is bound by rules of professional conduct. These rules govern what attorneys can and cannot do when representing clients. They cover things like honesty with the court. Lawyers cannot lie to judges or present evidence they know to be false. They cover things like candor. Lawyers must disclose certain information, even if it hurts their client's case. They cover things like competence. Lawyers must handle cases with appropriate skill and care. And they cover things like conflicts of interest. Lawyers cannot take actions that serve their own interests at the expense of their clients, or that serve one client at the expense of another. Violating these rules can result in discipline ranging from private reprimand to disbarment, losing your license to practice law entirely. When lawyers cite ethical concerns as their reason for withdrawing from a case, they're typically signaling that the client is asking them to do something that would violate these professional rules. The client wants them to make representations to the court that they believe are false. The client wants them to conceal information they're required to disclose. The client wants them to pursue strategies that the lawyers believe are frivolous or improper. The client is creating conflicts that make continued representation untenable. Any of these situations would justify withdrawal on ethical grounds. And when 3 lawyers quit in a week, all citing the same type of concern, it strongly suggests that Trump or his team are pushing for things that cross professional lines. The courtroom incident that preceded the 3rd resignation is particularly illuminating. A judge reportedly criticized Trump's defense team for conduct bordering on ethical violations. That kind of judicial criticism is serious. Judges don't casually accuse lawyers of approaching ethical violations. When a judge makes that kind of statement from the bench, it's a warning shot. It's telling the lawyers that they're getting close to a line they should not cross. It's putting them on notice that if they continue in the direction they're heading, there could be consequences. And the fact that a lawyer quit immediately after that criticism suggests they took the warning seriously. They saw the writing on the wall. They understood that continuing to represent Trump in the way Trump wanted to be represented would put their license at risk, and they chose their career over their client. What kinds of conduct could trigger this kind of ethical crisis? Based on what we've seen in Trump's legal cases over the years, there are several possibilities. One is making factual representations that are not supported by evidence. Trump has repeatedly wanted his lawyers to assert things in court about election fraud, about prosecutorial misconduct, about various legal theories that couldn't be backed up with actual proof. Lawyers who make unsupported factual claims to courts risk sanctions and ethical complaints. Some attorneys have been willing to do it, Others have not, and the ones who are not willing eventually have to leave. Another possibility is pursuing frivolous legal arguments. Courts expect lawyers to make arguments that have at least a colorable basis in law. You don't have to be right, but you have to be reasonable. You don't have to be right, but you have to be reasonable. Filing motions that no reasonable attorney would file. Making arguments that no credible lawyer would make. That's the kind of thing that gets you in trouble with bar associations. And Trump has a history of wanting to pursue legal theories that are, to put it charitably, creative. Theories about presidential immunity that have been rejected by courts. Theories about executive power that have no basis in precedent. Lawyers who push these theories too aggressively risk being seen as abusing the legal process. A third possibility involves the handling of evidence and witnesses. There have been concerns throughout Trump's legal battles about whether witnesses are being influenced inappropriately, about whether evidence is being handled properly, about whether the defense is complying with discovery obligations. If lawyers become aware of problems in these areas, if they discover that their client or others on the team are doing things that obstruct justice or tamper with evidence, they have an obligation to address it. And if the client refuses to correct the problem, the lawyers may have to withdraw. They cannot be complicit in ongoing misconduct. The pattern of lawyer departures from Trump's orbit extends well beyond this particular week. Over the years, Trump has burned through legal talent at an extraordinary rate. Lawyers join his team, spend some time dealing with his cases, and then leave, sometimes acrimoniously, sometimes quietly, but the turnover has been constant. And while some of that can be attributed to normal factors, difficult client, high-pressure cases, intense media scrutiny, the frequency of departures, citing ethical concerns, suggests something more fundamental. Trump's approach to legal defense seems to consistently create situations where lawyers feel they cannot continue without compromising their professional integrity. The implications for Trump's ongoing cases are severe. Consider what happens when a lawyer withdraws close to a hearing or trial date. The court has to decide whether to grant a continuance, a delay to allow new counsel to get up to speed. Sometimes judges are accommodating, but other times, especially when they suspect the lawyer changes, are strategic delays. They refuse. They tell the defendant that they had counsel, they chose to create disruption, and now they have to deal with the consequences. Trump could find himself in court without adequate representation because his own conduct drove his lawyers away. That's an incredibly dangerous position for any defendant, let alone a president facing multiple serious legal challenges. The scramble to find replacement attorneys is apparently intense. According to sources close to the situation, Trump's team is desperately reaching out to lawyers who might be willing to take on the cases. But there's a problem. Many qualified attorneys don't want anything to do with Trump's legal battles. Some have philosophical objections. Some have concerns about getting paid. Trump has a history of not paying his lawyers. Some are worried about the reputational damage of being associated with his defense. And increasingly, many are concerned about the ethical quagmire they would be walking into. The pool of lawyers willing to represent Trump has been shrinking for years. These latest resignations make the pool even smaller. The lawyers who might have been on the fence are now seeing 3 of their colleagues walk away, citing ethics, and thinking maybe they should stay away too. The judge's criticism about conduct bordering on ethical violations deserves additional attention, because judicial criticism of lawyers carries weight. Bar associations pay attention when judges complain about attorney conduct. Disciplinary proceedings can be initiated based on judicial referrals. When a judge says from the bench that lawyers are approaching ethical violations, it's not just rhetoric. It's a statement that goes into the record, that can be cited in future proceedings, that can form the basis for bar complaints. The lawyers in that courtroom understood this. They understood that the judge had just put a target on their backs, and at least one of them decided to get out before the situation got worse. The political dimension of these departures adds another layer of significance. Trump's legal troubles are not just legal, they're political. His ability to defend himself in court affects his ability to govern. His ability to project strength depends partly on appearing to have things under control. But when your lawyers keep quitting, when multiple attorneys walk away in a single week citing ethics, that's not strength. That's chaos. That's an operation falling apart at the seams. Trump supporters might dismiss the departures as fake news or deep state sabotage. But the reality is that these are real lawyers making real decisions to protect their careers and their professional standing. They're not quitting because of politics. They're quitting because what they're being asked to do crosses lines. The pressure on the remaining legal team must be immense. Whatever ethical concerns drove 3 lawyers to quit, the lawyers still on the case are presumably dealing with the same pressures, the same demands from the client, the same courtroom dynamics, the same judge who just criticized their conduct. How long before more of them decide they've had enough? How long before the next resignation announcement? Trump's legal team is now operating under a cloud, everyone wondering who's going to be next. That's not an environment conducive to effective legal representation. That's an environment where people are looking over their shoulders and planning their exits rather than focusing on the cases at hand. All right, so let's break this down into the key takeaways, because the collapse of Trump's legal team has implications that extend far beyond staffing headaches. We're looking at a crisis in legal representation that threatens Trump's ability to defend himself at a critical moment. We're looking at a pattern of ethical concerns that suggests something deeply problematic about how Trump approaches legal battles. And we're looking at consequences that could affect everything from trial outcomes to political standing. Let me walk you through the main points and what they mean. First key point: 3 lawyers quitting in a week, citing ethical concerns, is unprecedented for a sitting president. This is not normal. This is not how legal teams operate. High-profile clients, especially presidents, are supposed to attract top legal talent. They're supposed to have stable teams of experienced attorneys handling their cases. But Trump can't keep lawyers for more than days before they start fleeing. And they're not leaving for mundane reasons. They're leaving because they believe what they're being asked to do violates their professional obligations. That's a damning indictment of how Trump's legal operation functions. When 3 attorneys independently reach the same conclusion in a single week, the problem isn't the lawyers. The problem is the client. Second key point: the judge's criticism about conduct bordering on ethical violations created a breaking point. When a judge makes that kind of statement from the bench, it changes everything. It puts lawyers on notice that they're being watched, that their conduct is being scrutinized, that there could be consequences if they continue down the path they're on. The resignation that followed the criticism was almost certainly triggered by it. The lawyer heard the judge's warning and decided they couldn't continue. They chose their license over their client. And who could blame them? When a federal judge tells you you're approaching ethical violations, the smart move is to get out before things get worse. Third key point: the ethical concerns likely involve being asked to make unsupported claims or pursue frivolous arguments. Based on Trump's history, this is the most probable explanation for why lawyers keep quitting. Trump wants his attorneys to assert things in court that can't be supported by evidence. He wants them to pursue legal theories that have no basis in law. He wants them to fight in ways that cross professional lines. Some lawyers are willing to do that, at least for a while. But others, particularly those with established reputations and concerns about their long-term careers, eventually reach their limits. They realize that continuing to represent Trump will damage their standing in the legal community, and they leave. Fourth key point: finding replacement lawyers is becoming increasingly difficult. The pool of attorneys willing to represent Trump has been shrinking for years. Many qualified lawyers have said no, citing reputational concerns, payment concerns, or ethical concerns. Each round of high-profile departures makes recruitment even harder. Lawyers who might have been on the fence see their colleagues walking away, citing ethics, and they decide to stay away too. Trump's options are narrowing. He may end up with attorneys who are less experienced, less credible, less effective, or he may struggle to find adequate representation at all. Either way, his legal position deteriorates further. Fifth key point: the chaos disrupts case preparation at a critical moment. With hearings and trials approaching, Trump needs lawyers who know the cases inside and out, who have reviewed all the evidence, who understand the legal issues, who are prepared to argue effectively in court. Instead, he has a team in turmoil. Lawyers walking out, new lawyers trying to get up to speed, gaps in preparation that can't be easily filled. Courts may not be sympathetic. They may refuse to delay proceedings just because Trump can't keep attorneys on his team. He could end up in court with representation that is inadequate through his own fault. That's a recipe for terrible outcomes. Sixth key point: the pattern of departures suggests something fundamentally wrong with Trump's approach to legal defense. 1 ethical resignation is notable. 2 is a pattern. 3 in a week is a crisis. And this isn't a new phenomenon. Trump has been cycling through lawyers throughout his legal battles. Something about how he wants to be represented, what he asks his attorneys to do, how he interacts with his legal team, drives people away. The common denominator in all these departures is Trump himself. His approach creates ethical dilemmas that lawyers eventually find intolerable. Until he changes that approach, the revolving door of attorney departures will continue. Seventh key point: the political implications compound the legal damage. Trump's brand is built on strength and competence. But what does it say when he can't even keep lawyers on his team? What does it say when attorneys would rather quit than continue representing him? The optics are terrible. The narrative writes itself. Trump is so demanding, so difficult, so willing to push lawyers toward ethical violations that experienced professionals are walking away rather than continue. That's not the image of a strong leader in control. That's the image of a client no one wants to work with. an operation in chaos, a defense falling apart. So where does this leave Trump? What's the trajectory from here? The immediate future is scrambling, trying to find replacement lawyers, trying to get new attorneys up to speed, trying to maintain some semblance of effective representation as critical dates approach. But the underlying problem isn't going away. Whatever Trump is doing that drives lawyers to quit citing ethics, he's likely going to keep doing it. It's who he is. It's how he operates. And that means more resignations are probably coming, more chaos, more disruption, more lawyers deciding their careers matter more than their client. The courts will be watching all of this closely. Judges are aware when defendants have difficulty maintaining counsel. They're aware when lawyers quit citing ethical concerns. And while judges try to be fair, they also don't have unlimited patience for defendants who create their own problems. If Trump's legal chaos appears to be strategic, designed to delay proceedings, courts will push back. They'll refuse continuances. They'll proceed with whatever representation Trump has. They'll hold him accountable for the dysfunction his own conduct has created. The political implications for 2026 loom over everything. Republican candidates are going to have to answer questions about Trump's legal chaos, about why lawyers keep quitting, about what it means that attorneys are citing ethical concerns. These are uncomfortable questions with no good answers. Standing by Trump means defending the indefensible. Distancing from Trump means risking his base's wrath. The lawyer departures add another layer of difficulty to an already challenging political landscape for Republicans trying to navigate the Trump question. Keep watching this story. Keep paying attention to the lawyer departures and what they signal, because the collapse of Trump's legal team isn't just a staffing issue. It's a symptom of deeper problems. Problems with how Trump approaches legal battles, problems with what he asks lawyers to do, problems that drive away talent and create ethical crises. Every departure makes his legal position worse. Every resignation signals that something is seriously wrong, and the consequences are going to ripple through his cases and his presidency in the weeks and months ahead. This is what happens when the way you want to fight can't be squared with professional ethics. When your approach to legal defense creates impossible situations for the people trying to help you. When you push lawyers so hard that they choose their careers over your case. Trump built his brand on fighting and winning, but right now, his fighters keep walking away, his team keeps falling apart, and his ability to mount any kind of effective defense is collapsing before our eyes. The lawyers know something we don't. They've seen what's happening behind closed doors. They've heard what Trump is asking them to do. They've evaluated the situation with the benefit of information we don't have access to. And they've concluded, 3 of them in a single week, that they cannot continue. That conclusion should tell us something. It should tell us that the situation is worse than the public statements suggest, that the ethical problems are serious, that the legal jeopardy is real. The lawyers are sending a message by walking away, and that message is that Trump's legal defense has become something they cannot ethically be part of. I'll see you in the next one.